Today we're going to go over one of my favorite games of all time. And before you ask, no, it's not one of my games. I'm not quite that vain. This game is so good that it actually got a name. It's called Rubinstein's Immortal, named after the player controlling the black pieces, Akiba Rubinstein. One of the best players in the world when this game was played, in 1907, by the way. If not the best player in the world at that time. By the way, if you think how we determine the world champions nowadays, you don't even want to hear about how hard it was to wrestle the title from Emanuel Lasker, who was the world champion in 1907. But that's a different story for a different day. Let's get to this exciting game. Alright, so white started with d4. Black played d5. So far, very standard. Here we go. I'm just going to go through these moves pretty fast because they're all very good and common moves. And as you can see, we have a totally symmetrical position. Not the most ambitious opening play of all time for both colors. But that's actually one of the reasons why I love teaching my students this game. It really shows that you don't have to take major risks to win a beautiful game like this. A lot of times it's actually best to embrace equality and let your chess strength decide who will win. You don't always have to trick your opponents. Most times you can just outplay them. Alright, so the most common moves here are bishop d3, when we would take advantage of that bishop moving out and go like that. This is, as you can see, pretty close to equal. Another main move is to go a3, with the idea of taking that pawn and expanding with b4 after that. This game, white just immediately took the pawn, which allows black to take the pawn back without having to move their bishop, which is nice. Alright, so a3 happens. Now I kind of don't know why Rubinstein didn't just castle here, but they played a6, which it's not bad, but as you can see, now it's down to equal. And then very strange here, they did not back up to a7, which would be a point of a6, but they actually went to d6. Still very decent move, of course. Bishop comes into the game. Hopefully you guys all saw why white did not say, ooh, look at this. I have 3 attackers on that pawn. Black only has 2 defenders. Ooh, I can win a pawn. Yay. So first of all, your king is not really close to castling. They're going to have to move out their bishop and then move their king to castle. So that's already a point to not take a pawn in the opening. Kind of want to get your king safe first. Usually, of course. But if you do this move, you have just blundered at least a piece per pawn. Alright, if you guys can, pause your videos. See if you can see what black would most likely play here. They would play knight takes d5, drawing out the queen to take a red back, which is another blunder. And the whole point of that was, discovered attack on the queen, discovered check, or discovered attack on the queen, and it's also a check. So they're gonna have to get out of this check. Maybe the best way is they're gonna lose their queen anyway, so might as well go like that and allow their queen to be captured. With a huge advantage for black, of course. Alright, but neither of these players, by the way, Rotwelli, or I don't know exactly how to pronounce the name, but was a Polish master. So, extremely solid player that's not going to fall for that, probably. And Akiba Rubinstein is Grandmaster Strength, because he is probably the second best, or maybe the best player in the world at the time this game happened. Alright, bishop comes out to b2. Much better move than blundering their knight. They get castled, and the first kind of weird move of the game, queen to d2. It makes sense. It gives up the d1 square for the rook. Kind of want the rook to be on its own, though, so if you are going to move the queen, maybe queen to c2 would have been better, or probably even better than queen d2 or queen c2 is take the pawn, you take back. Again, do not blunder your knight or queen by taking that pawn. Just simply move out your bishop, get castled, have a slightly better position, and the game goes on. Because what happened here was the queen goes there, which is kind of weird. Then black plays this really interesting pawn sacrifice, like that. I might have been like, hey, you know what? White kind of wasted a move with queen to d2, so I think it's okay to take this pawn without the bishop moving, actually. And draw out the bishop. At some point, we can play b5, if not right now. We can probably replay it right now. And the point of b5, by the way, is wherever that bishop goes. Now our other bishop gets in the game like that. Yeah. So there we go. We could also go back to our queen d7 move, which might even be better, getting the rook over to here. All right, so queen d2 happened in the game, though, and queen e7 happened. And now this is a very important lesson, actually, that when your opponent is sacrificing a pawn, which black is now, by the way, because they do not have that discovered attack, it's really important to try to keep them at their word. So in this game, white really should have just been like, oh, you're going to sacrifice pawn? Well, guess what? I'm going to take it. I'm not going to back down. I'm going to take there, take there, take there, take there. And sure, this looks scary with this attack. I mean, if they don't do anything, by the way, we're going to take that pawn, check the king, discovered attack again. But we can't do something. We can just run away like that, and black can get their pieces out really fast. Just like that, they got all their pieces in the game, but black is down a pawn. And especially after you get castled here, both kings are safe. I don't think white has anything to complain about in this position. So they kind of, I think they're a little intimidated by Akiba Rubinstein because everyone knew that he was one of the best players in the world. Again, if not the best player in the world. I would kind of argue that he probably was, for at least this year, the best player in the world. So he's like, okay, Akiba Rubinstein sacrificing a pawn, which, by the way, is not really his style. He's more of a positional player and really big expert on rook games. We actually learned a lot of stuff from Akiba Rubinstein's games. All right, so now that the bishop's moved, we get the tempo on that bishop, and then we get the tempo on that bishop with our bishop coming into the game, which, by the way, is very important because the bishop was kind of blocked out here with the pawn on b6. And we don't really want to play e5 because that lets the knight jump into here. So it's actually pretty important to have that b7 square for our bishop. Now this bishop is like, I'm kind of in this pin because of my weird queen d2 move. This queen has to move again. Black is just mobilizing their pieces. White finally gets castled, but because of all their gymnastics they had to do, they're a little behind in development, which lets black do the first foray in the center here. Take, take, and... Alright, so if white had played something like this, black probably has a good position, but maybe white can hold with really correct play, and they might even be able to trick black and take home the whole point. But they did a thing that a lot of players do, which is everyone loves to attack pieces because they know when they attack a piece, that piece is most likely going to move somewhere. So it's probably going to move there, 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 or maybe even take the knight. They would actually be pretty happy if took the knight because, let's keep this one a dubious, because now white has the two bishops, and including this bishop, which has no counterpart, no bishop of the same color to block it, so white would be looking to the future pretty happily. But that's not what happened. Instead, black played a much better move than taking the knight. They said, you know what? Okay, you get a tempo on my bishop, but first of all, bishops are long-range pieces, so they can do damage from far away or close up, so doesn't really affect the bishop having to move. Secondly, though, big-time weaknesses are getting created in white's camp, and that lets black do their really cool continuation that's coming up later. All right, e4. White thinks they're getting an advantage here, but really they are kind of weakening their king quite a bit. As you can see, the computer is not impressed by their play. Of course, they did not have computers back in 1907, and even if they did, unless they were cheating, they wouldn't be able to use the evaluation. So they don't know this, but yeah, they're really getting overextended and really allowing Rubinstein to get their pieces to good squares where they can do damage. Alright, so just like that, without even doing anything that crazy, Black has got this big advantage again, according to the computer, so I don't even know if they know that they have a big advantage, but they're probably pretty happy that they got all their pieces on good squares, and their king is extremely happy with this really nice pawn shelter. So basically all their big pieces are happy where they are, whereas White has these two kind of off, pieces that are not doing that much. And they also could probably think that they're doing better than they are, because they are just having a field day attacking Rubinstein's pieces. But make sure when you attack your opponent's pieces, you're not driving them to squares they already want to go to. And especially with pawns, because don't forget, pawns can't go backwards. Like, one of White's best moves here might be pawn backwards, if they were allowed to. Just to shore up their weaknesses around their king. So they come in even further, and first Rubinstein hits them with this check, which again they allowed by moving this pawn. Of course, they move out of the check, and really cool move here that's going to start the fireworks. So first up, where do you think the best place to put this knight is? Well, hopefully you said g4, which looks like it just hangs a knight, but don't forget, if they take that knight, they relinquish the defense on that bishop on d3. And in fact, this rook is about to become a pig, which is a rook on the 7th or 2nd rank if you're Black, where it just gobbles up all the pawns that start there. It also keeps the king on the 1st rank. It's just a very strong move. All right, so knight to g4 happened, and White said, you know what, I gotta stop this bishop looking right at my king. I can't take that knight, so I'm gonna play bishop to e4. And what could be more natural? Because look, you're defending it twice. Black's only attacking it once. It doesn't look risky at all. But first thing Black does is use the fact that the knight is safe on that g4 square to boom. Now they're teaming up together to, yeah, White's just totally not paying attention. They go like that. Super blunder. Wait. So yeah, don't do that. What they did was maybe one of their best chances, which was pawn to g3. So they go pawn to g3. They're thinking, cool, I'm defending my h2 pawn. Now Black should not take this pawn anymore, because White would take it, and you would take there maybe, and now White has a choice. They can take the bishop, or they can take the that's a knight. Take the bishop on b7, or take the knight on h2. Both are decent moves. And White is actually, as you can see from the evaluation bar, right back in the game. So yeah, Kiba Rubinstein should definitely not take that pawn. They're also thinking, okay, cool, I'm guarding that pawn. I'm also attacking the queen, so the queen's gonna have to like run somewhere, maybe h3 or something. But then, now they can just take the bishop, and everything's guarded. Actually, things look great for White in this position. So go ahead and pause your videos, try to figure out the combination that Rubinstein played here. It's really what makes this game the famous Immortal game. Alright, so first off, he sacrifices the rook. Alright, I stole Levy's thing there. So he sacrifices the rook. He's also, by the way, sacrificing his queen, which is actually what White takes. So, by the way, if they took the rook right there, not so good, because now the knight is not covering the bishop anymore. So the queen is again This poor queen has been overworked this whole game, really. It's trying to guard the bishop on e4, and it's also trying to stop this queen from checkmating them. So when you see that, it's a really good idea to take one of those pieces. And now this queen has a terrible choice of, do I take there? Or allowing a checkmate? Or do I block with a rook? But then guess what? Now they're going to have the same choice. Do I take there and allow this checkmate, or do I block it? And by the way, blocking it allows a checkmate because this queen cannot move. It's pinned. That's actually checkmate right there. All right, so rook takes c3 was the awesome move. Also, by the way, if you take the bishop over here, maybe you think like, oh, it's better to take that bishop than the queen. Then the rook will come down here. Can't take it, unfortunately, because that queen, see, won't even let me take it. Queen is pinning the pawn. So yeah, now white's, this might be white's best move, but they were in trouble here too. For instance, this could happen. The bishop interferes with the defense of the h2 pawn. We might take it. Check. Yeah, don't forget that's a check. And pow, this is going to be a checkmate. All right, so that doesn't work. All right, let's come back to rook takes c3. In the real game, white took on h4. And now is another brilliant move. Yeah, black only has one move that wins here, but it does win, and it's very good. As you can see, it supposedly leads to a mate in 8. Alright, hopefully you guys saw rook to d2, because again, this queen is trying to guard this, and now it's trying to save itself, and it's also trying to stop this checkmate. By the way, very important, I don't know if you guys noticed, the king never could come over here in any of these lines, because of this bishop going all the way down to g1. Do you guys see that f4 move from a long time ago? Really got them in deep trouble. In this game, at least. So sometimes it's okay to move that f-pawn, but you gotta be a little bit more cognizant of something like this happening to you. All right, so the rook comes to d2, trying to decoy the queen away from guarding their e4 bishop. And that's, in fact, what happens. So now the bishop takes here, and white went queen to g2. Now, a lot of players here would mess up and take the queen on g2, because they'd be like, cool, I got the queen for a bishop, the queen's worth 9, I'm only worth 3. But very important you see what the situation is. White is actually winning by 8 points right now with all the sacrifices that black has done. So unless we're going to get a lot more than 8 points back, it might be time to look for checkmates rather than points, because we're just down too many points here. So there's several good moves. Of course, Akiba Rubinstein picks the coolest one and best one. Well, it leads to the quickest mate, so I guess that's the best. One of my students suggested rook to c2, which is actually a really awesome move. Again, you cannot take that rook because you are pinned. And if you take the bishop, by the way, you can't take the knight either because, again, you are pinned. If you take the bishop that was pinning the queen to the king, then the rook comes over here and checkmates. So rook to c2 would have been pretty awesome. By the way, if we did take that queen, let's give that one a dubious. We still do get this fork, but the real problem here is they gotta get out of the fork while attacking a piece at the same time. And technically, black could play this, which shores up the knight, renews the threat of attacking the bishop on b2, and continues a kind of endgame attack. So black would be doing pretty good here, but there's a way to checkmate here, so let's do that. So the move that happened in the real game was, again, taking advantage of this pin. Rook to h3, just a really cool concluding move here. So really their only choice here is, because they can't take the rook, they can't take the knight, because again, they're absolutely pinned. Their king has nowhere to go, It's safe here, but it can't, well, obviously can't take its own pieces. And the bishop again is shooting down here. So their only real choice is to take the bishop, and just like before, rook takes h2 with a checkmate. All right, impressive chessers. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I hope it makes you think like, hey, maybe I don't have to play some crazy gambits or really risky openings to get to play a beautiful game like this. All right, take it easy, and of course, stay impressive. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and if you can, share with a friend.